Testing 1, 2. Medawalot yo. Waldaya, I'm sa biggest snooty Waldaya, apni biggest sin, meda kinek waje ya, kinek bemari na ju mari. Ni Deluisi Coady Stevens, leo in Mi'kmaq territory. Good evening, everyone. My name is Coady Stevens. I'm with the Mi'kmaq Warrior Society. This is a big crowd. I never seen a crowd this big. I never spoke at a crowd this big. And the applause you guys gave is so amazing. And the song I just heard is a little moving. Like, I never realized the strength of support we had in BC. And it's amazing when people come together for the same cause. First, I think in order for me to explain what happened in Elsipogtog as a warrior, I think I must first explain why I became a warrior. That way, you guys would understand a little bit more why I do what I do. In my community, I'm from the Maritime Provinces, territory we call Mi'kmaq. I don't go by the certain reserves, I just go by the Mi'kmaq territory. And what brought me to this fight was when you grow up as a Mi'kmaq in my community, it's not really the best upbringing you can have. As a First Nation, I struggled a lot with myself as who I was as a First Nation person. I suffered with jails, I suffered with rehab and detox. And I see institutions on a regular basis. And after 10 years of, for long I wonder, why do I keep acting out the way I act out? And every time I went to court, when I would get a charge, the judge would say, Coady, you're an evil man. You're an evil man. You keep doing all these things. You don't learn. You gotta go to jail. And I go back to jail. Then the same cycle again. But every time when I speak out at court, when I start talking about how it is to grow up to be a Mi'kmaq person, the court all of a sudden gives me a slap on the wrist. They'll say, okay, yeah, you're right, Coady, you're right. We'll just give you a slap on the wrist, like just to make me hush hush. And wow. And I'm going to speak I can speak for the Mi'kmaq communities, but I can't really speak for the BC communities, but I believe we all have the same struggle. We all have the same social issues, but we all have different stories. And for me, I started my story with institutions at a young age. And that was as a result of the way this country has treated my people over the course of 500 years. And it's proven, and there's big study on it, it's referred to as prehistoric trauma. And you can only assimilate a people, you can cause genocide to a people, you can take their language away, you can put them in jails, you can make them struggle. After someone struggles, people's social structure suffers so long over the course of 500 years, through residential schools, through scalping. They took our pride. When they took our grandparents to the residential school, they took their tradition away. They weren't allowed to speak Mi'kmaq. They weren't allowed to practice in their traditional teachings. That was something that was frowned upon. And if you decided to pray, you were going to be an Indian that day, you wanted to be a Mi'kmaq, and you couldn't. You'd get beaten for it, and you'd go through. I can only imagine. I can't even imagine what the residential school survivors went through. But I know it's a cycle that continues as a community. And it was because of the result of what this country did to me. And I thought I was that evil man, but I realized it wasn't me that was evil. In fact, it was the government of this country that was evil. They put us through so much. The government put our people through so much. And right now we got a people that are lost, that don't know their way. They don't have an identity. That was taken. And for me, as my struggle, when I didn't have an identity, I didn't have a culture. I spoke Mi'kmaq, but that's one thing I was blessed with, but I wasn't taught culture. And I took it upon myself to find culture at a later date. So as a result of me not having any culture, not having a self-identity, and going through racism, because I grew up in off reserve, and racism was real. It was real in Cape Breton back home. So, okay, I'm trying to find the right words, but so you guys are gonna have to bear with me. I took a long flight. I came from Cape Breton, so it was a long flight. I'm kind of feeling a little jet lagged. So, but as me being that evil man, it was the country that did that to me. And over the years, I blamed myself. I said, I'm that evil man. And so what the judge told me, I ended up believing it. And deep within, I was that evil man. But that all changed when my son was born 3 years ago. And I was blessed with my son, and he helped me open my eyes. And I seen really what was going on. And as me being a warrior, I'm fighting for the best for my son. And I think about my son growing up in the same way that I did, through the same oppression, through the same prejudice, through the same court system. It breaks my heart. I think about my poor son. And I know my time, I'm still here. I survived. And I'm still here, and I'm still strong. They tried to take the Indian from me, but they couldn't. And now I want it back. And I want that for my son. So I'm going to teach my son the traditions. I want to take it upon myself to find my tradition myself, and so that I can pass it on to my son. Because if I had tradition growing up, I wouldn't have struggled with addiction. I struggled with addiction for over, I'd say, 10 years for prescription drugs. And that was as a result of, that was when I started getting incarcerated, during the time when I was an evil man. But I did it to escape the pressures. I did it to escape the reserve. I did it to escape res life. Because res life is, people always say, you're lucky, you're native, you get a free house, and you get money and stuff, and that's not true. Because you might get a free house, but you gotta survive through the reserve. The house gotta be on the reserve. And I strongly believe, in my opinion, that if I grew up as a non-native, I would have already had my own house by now. I would have paid for it, but I would have had my own house. And I think about everything that's happening on the reserve. You got many of the same people, the same as me, that are struggling with addiction, that are struggling with finding themselves, that are struggling with a prejudiced system. And the reserve is falling apart. It's got no identity. And we gotta find that back. So to me, being a warrior, I have to bring that back for my son. And I gotta make sure what's in the best interest for my son. Because right now, the government of Canada has the same plans for him that they had for me. And those plans aren't very good, not for my son. In 2007 was the last time I had gone to jail previous to my time in New Brunswick through the protest. In 2007, I did time with 23 natives. And this was not in the whole jail. There was more natives in the jail. This was 23 natives that I did time with in the same block. A block of 12 people getting switched around. Out of that 23, today 11 are dead. 10 are from suicide. 1 was from an overdose. And they're still dying. That's 50%. That means I have a 50% chance of doing the same thing. Because of how I grew up. Because of where I grew up. And we need to fight and make sure that that doesn't happen no more. I gotta wake up and look through my eyes and see that there's more to this life. People always say, oh, you're wasting your time. Look at all the people that are here today. I'm not wasting my time. British Columbia's got to be one of the nicest provinces I have ever seen. All the time growing up, I always watched the TV, like with stuff going on in BC. What got me the most was the killer whales. When you see the killer whale going on the beach, going after the salmon, that is amazing sight. I hope I get to see at least killer whales fin before I go home. And another thing that I always wanted to do was to catch a sockeye salmon. I always see them, the big red salmon. We don't got those guys. When we got Atlantic salmon, just one kind of salmon. And not to mention the trees. When I was driving by today, I seen amazing trees. And it was a beautiful forest. We don't got forests like that back home. I don't want to go anywhere now. So that is why I became a warrior. What's in the best interest, not only for my son, for my nieces and nephews, for all of our children. Because with these pipelines and with these fracking and these new big projects, mining, it's going to have a devastating impact on my people. Back home, we threw out an oil company by the name of Petrowork. And they took off, they ran with their tail behind their legs. And it wasn't much of a fight. They went broke. So then this other part came up where it was SWN, shale gas protest. That was the same time we were all protesting. But ours was over quicker. And one day, when I was in Waikagma, I said, okay, I'm going to go to either Eskazoni, because I had no place, I had no home. I just finished school, I was an electrician. I did all my training, and I said, either I go home to Eskazoni, I'm not going to get no job, but I'll have a place. I got my own house in Eskazoni, but not by choice. Or I can go to Elzebuktu. And I'm glad I chose to go to Elzebuktu because that was one of the best decisions I have ever made in my life. And it was just a matter of going this way or that way. And I was leaning, Eskazoni is an hour away, and I was hitchhiking, so I said, I can go to Eskazoni and be there in a couple hours, or I can hitchhike to Big Cove. So I got on the road, and I got a ride saying, I'm going to Port Hawkesbury, but I can drop you off if you want to go at the Cancel Causeway. This is in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. I said, sure. I said, I'll go on to Port Hawkesbury. And I ended up, as soon as I got off in Port Hawkesbury, I got another ride. I'm going to Truro. So I said, I know where I'm going. I'm going to Big Cove. So when I went to Big Cove, I got there within that day. I must have left about 1 in the afternoon. I got there before dark. And as soon as I got there, not even 5 minutes later, they were going up to their first running with the RCMP. And I would have missed it if I was 5 more minutes late. So I was thankful for that, and I said, yeah, I got on, and we went up. And we got on, we seen this poor woman, she's screaming. I think she must have been, she was an elder anyway, and she was screaming, she's like, they took the cab, they took our stuff. And I'm like, holy crap, what's going on here? And sure enough, the RCMP were there at the camp, searching the camp. And we got rid of them. They ended up leaving, and they left for a couple of days then. They left it was called Salmon River. And they left Salmon River. And they took like a couple week break, maybe 2 weeks. So we waited at Salmon River for about a week, and we said, okay, they're not coming back, so we moved on. We went on to Rogersville. This was a very important time during all this because that's when we developed some of our strongest allies there. This is where it was the Acadian village in New Brunswick, and they all helped out. They got us together, they talked to their local government. I'm not sure what's the name of the government, or it's a local government, just a town and the municipality. And they went to their municipality, they said, we need help to get these companies out here. And the municipality didn't help us out much. But we created some strong allies in this fight. We were there for about a month. And this is when I was going back and forth to home.